In the time before the Titans, before the gods of Olympus, a great battle was waged.
Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my God of War Ascension Titan difficulty video walkthrough. This is the village of Kirra. This is one of the tougher sections of the game. I say that because the game's not that difficult, and this is one of the moments where you could probably die if you're having a tough time. We're going to be introduced to a couple of new enemies, and this new enemy is a bit of a health tank. And one thing I did notice on the transition from Hard to Titan is some of the enemies have got really insanely buffed in the life department. So much so that I think it's a little too much. Namely the Cerberuses. You come up against these purple Cerberuses. I'm not too sure if they enjoy the same sex or if they're just flamboyant, but they've got so much life. I have a video where I fight one and I must beat it up for about a week and it's still going. And I'm doing counters, and the counters on this game are extremely powerful. They're more so powerful than the last game because they've changed how the system works, and I haven't really mentioned it, so I'm going to explain it now. All I'm doing here, guys, is I'm smashing the doors, I'm finding the orbs, because you need as many red orbs as you can get so you can power up your blades. Focus on your blades immediately, get them up to max, and the game gets easier. But in the old games, the block was brilliant, actually. I thought it was so good. When you blocked the instant somebody attacked you, you did an automatic parry and riposte, and it was powerful. It had AoE to it, it could knock enemies in the air. It was super useful, because what it enabled you to do is it enabled you to stay in the pocket. So you could be spamming, square attacks, doing a couple of light attacks, wait for the attack, block it, do the riposte, spam the attacks. You could literally dirty box the enemies, the bosses. It made for some really enjoyable, intense, skill-based fights where if you were good enough to time the blocks, you could stay directly in their face and just annihilate them. And it was risk versus reward, but it was good. And as much as I say it was skill, it was very safe, because if you messed the parry, you still blocked, so you didn't take damage. Well, the studio have decided to change this, and I don't know if... Do you notice how I keep pausing it instead of going to that menu? It messed me up so much through this game. It really did. Because, I'm sorry guys, start should pause it, and then the select button should bring up your menu. That's just how I feel on that decision. And apparently my brain does too, so it messed me up a lot. This is the Juggernaut fight. This guy's got a lot of life. I'm going to be throwing these weapons at him. You want to avoid him, counter-punch him, and, just do everything you can. Kick the dogs at him if you can. There's another one going to turn up that makes this fight a little bit more challenging. But they're not too bad, this enemy. And they don't show up too frequently, so when they do, you should be able to deal with them. Especially later on when you have the ability to freeze enemies and you have the ability to use the clone, the Orcos clone, which is easily the most overpowered move in the game, and I'm going to show you why later on. But back on topic, here comes the second guy. The block was powerful in old God of Wars. It was powerful and it was unique, because there wasn't any real games that did it that way. I could be wrong there, but it was uniquely God of War. And on this game, they've done what it does in Ninja Gaiden, where... Well, what it does in a lot of games, actually, where when you hold the block, if you press X, he does an animation that if you get attacked at the moment you initiate that animation, you will do a parry. And it's really inconsistent, because the parries themselves seem to be really powerful. The timing on them seems a little up and down sometimes. Sometimes it's spot on, other times you have to be a little earlier than you'd like to be. And I've experimented a lot with it, guys, because anybody that's watched previous videos of mine, any of my Dark Souls content, any of, a lot of the games I play, I love parrying, I really do. I'm not even sure why. I think it stems from Onimusha 2, because they had something called the Isen technique, which I fell in love with it. And from that moment onwards, I've always tried to be a parry kind of guy. And it's interesting because sometimes it's so destructive You know, it makes the fights a joke, and then other times it barely does anything. And I don't know if it's enemy specific, I don't know if it's situationally specific, I don't know if I was doing them wrong. The game's not been out long enough for me to have these answers, and the zeitgeist right now is everybody trying to figure things out, everybody trying to find the best solutions, you know. It'll take a couple of weeks, even months, before the real, you know, sure-to, guaranteed way to beat everything starts to be discovered, because as it stands, everybody's just, you know, figuring it out. And the parry system is changed a lot, and a lot of people are having problems with it and not liking it, but I think it's good, and I think it's, in some situations, I think it's too good, because I've already mentioned one thing that's always bugged me with God of War, which is both a strength and a weakness, is you can hide behind your block. And I think that mitigates a lot of the challenge. And on this game, because you can still hide behind your block, because the counter doesn't require you to remove it, you have like nothing stopping you from just blocking and timing parries. Nothing at all. You can literally make a legitimate strategy out of every fight in this game, parry only. And immediately you'll get people thinking, well, the parrying's tough to do because it's tough timing. And then you'll get the counter argument of the parrying is, you know, skill based because it requires you to do the timing. And it's an interesting disconnect, because certain strategies on this game that I've developed that you're going to see in my guide are very parry reliant. Any enemy that has armor, parry it. It's that simple. What is the point in attacking an enemy that just walks through your attacks and hits you? You cannot spam the throw because the throw doesn't work. You're completely safe when you hold block. It cannot do anything to damage you, and all you need to do is time one button press a couple of times and win. So in some ways I think the new system has made this a much more defensive fighting system than it's ever been before, but at the same time I think it's mixed it up enough that even players who've been playing it for a long time are probably going to have fun with it, because one of the things that is always interesting in a sequel or in a, you know, a spiritual successor or anything you want to say like that is discovering the differences, discovering the changes, the nuance. And I think this parry system, although at this moment in time a lot of people are disappointed with it, they don't like it, they don't think it's natural, I think in time that opinion's going to change. And it's going to change when people realise how powerful it is. And who knows? I mean, there's a boss coming up in the Oracle's chamber called Castor. And he's actually a twin, it's Castor and Pollux. And the only reason I know that is those names ring true to my ears because I used to be obsessed with the film Face Off, and that's the name of Nicolas Cage and his brother's character in that, who were named after the mythology. And this boss goes into a really cheap phase where he does a combo that lands on an unblockable hit, that finishes on an unblockable hit, sorry, and immediately afterwards sometimes he finishes the combo by spamming a projectile. And because he doesn't do it every time, sometimes you walk into it when you use the opening to attack, and it can be really cheap. And I was having trouble with it because I was only doing light attacks, I was only getting 1 or 2 hits in, and I was being really evasive. And one thing I noticed on this game is almost all of the bosses, you have very small windows of openings. You seem to spend the entire fight avoiding them, and then every so often you get to do a few attacks. And I don't really remember the old God of Wars being like that. This one seems to be a lot about it. A lot of situational awareness as well, because you fight 2 bosses at the same time on more than one occasion. And it can be tough, but there are always ways. But this boss in this last phase, because I couldn't hurt him with my claws enough, with my Blades of Chaos, sorry, I just decided to try parrying him. And I parried the physical attack a few times, didn't seem to make a difference, didn't seem to do anything. And then I decided to parry the magic attack that he spams. And the first thing I noticed was, when you parry the first one, you don't seem to have enough time to parry the second one, because you seem to be caught in recovery frames, which I don't like. That could be me not being good enough to hit the second parry, because the timing is quite precise. and it's definitely a rhythm that you've got to get the feeling for. I don't know, so what this meant is I could parry the first one, but I always took a hit, and the second hit didn't do too much damage, so I didn't really mind. You know, a lot of the really skillful players who play these games to try and get complete perfection, they'll probably not think that that's good enough because they don't want to get hit, but for what I needed it to be, it was fine. And I did this 3 times, parrying this projectile, 3 or 4 times, and it was over. It killed the boss. And I couldn't believe it. I actually restarted the checkpoint just to make sure it worked a second time before I captured it. Because I couldn't believe how fast he died. And it was all because of this parry system that I believe a lot of people are not going to use to its full potential. Mainly because, you know, as soon as you realise it's different, it's going to be that immediate stubbornness to accept change, which a lot of people who've played series for a long time, they're the people that suffer the most because they're the ones that have it the hardest time adjusting. Unless you're a very quick learner or you're just that kind of guy. But this section here, you can use the Rage of Ares. You can do that kind of stuff if you want to. I just spam grab. I was trying to see if I could get a high combo because you do get more orbs depending on your combo. And I was just trying to get this guy's weapon actually. You'll notice I keep kicking him. Sometimes they don't drop it though. That guy did first time. Very strange. But I think a lot of people are going to be so preoccupied with the weapon system of, you know, picking up these sub-weapons to really mess too much with the counters. But I hope they do, because it's so powerful. But the next thing that they've changed that I've not mentioned yet is the weapon. On previous God of Wars, you collected an assortment of weapons. You generally got a very heavy weapon that did a lot of damage, but it was slow. And then you generally got either a novelty weapon or another fast alternative to the weapons that you have, the blades. On God of War 3, they did something really stupid, I thought. They essentially gave you a handful of different weapons which were colour variants of the same weapon. And they had vastly different combos, very different approaches to, you know, the attacks and the animations of the attacks. But, you know, beneath all the flair and the flashy aesthetic, they were essentially blades of chaos. And I thought it was dumb, completely dumb. Especially considering that the previous games had, you know, usually a handful of different things. And the one saving grace of God of War 3 was the Nemean Cestus, which was the heavy weapon. And it was, you know, the spiritual successor to the hammer, the barbarian hammer, which is my favourite weapon in a God of War, because it was just ridiculously powerful. So this game, what they've done, they've gone down an elemental upgrade path rather than separate weapons. So for a lot of people who played these series, they just use the Blade of Chaos. I was that way. I always use the blades. Or Blades of Exile and Blades of, you know, the Blades of Athena, Blades of whatever they want to call them bloody selves. Blades of the ever-changing name. So you never messed about with the other stuff. You just never dabbled at all. This is when I got bored and I decided to use magic to try and skip it up. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't do as much as you think it would. But they've gone for one weapon, you know, different attributes to it. And I think a lot of people, as I was saying, only use, you know, the blades. They never really dabbled with the other stuff. They kept with it simple. They didn't want to change. So I think it's aimed at those kind of players. And you'll notice there's a transition there. For some reason, when I stopped my capture, I didn't start recapturing, and I ran forward and went into this arena. Luckily enough, I died. So I noticed that I wasn't capturing and I didn't get very far. So I do apologise about that, guys, but you were only missing me run through the door and end up in this place. And the first thing you want to do here, kill the archers, and this is what I'm going to show you here. You can block everything in this room. You'll notice that's what I'm doing. Just block them, get a few cheeky hits in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to parry him. That's a parry, that's a riposte, that's a grab. This does a swinging effect that damages the enemies. That's literally what I'm going to do. I'm going to bait the big guy so I can parry him. And it's unbelievable. You are 100% safe. The only time you take damage is if you mess the parry up, which is very easy to do, mainly because the game is new and a lot of the attacks have very specific timing, and if you don't know them, you can make mistakes. And I will make mistakes in this guide. I am only human, but you know, if I can do this quite reliably, sorry, so can you. It's that simple. And get a few hits in. Just be careful with this guy, because he does this thing where he whips you, and it's a throw, and he smashes you into the ground. And you need to be really careful for that move. One thing I have noticed with the parry, sometimes you press it and it doesn't do it. I don't know if that's my pad, because I've been having so many troubles with my PlayStation pad, it's not even funny. For some reason, this is a pad, guys, that I have barely used. The reason I've barely used it is because I don't play my PlayStation. There is very little reason for me, personally, to play a PlayStation 3. There's just no games there that I want to do. I've beaten all the games I want to play on that system, and before this came out, I was barely turning it on. So this is a PS3 with a pad that's had, I don't know, like 1/10 of the hammer my PS2 pad has had. Like, I've only ever owned one PS2 pad, and I bought the PS2, I think, a year into its life cycle, and it still lives in my bedroom. Same pad, never needed to change it. The only problem with it is the analog rubbers come off, which is annoying, but I can deal with that. Never had any problem with it. But for whatever reason, this PlayStation 3 pad, which is essentially a bloody baby because it's hardly been used, the buttons are sticking on the square. Of all the buttons to stick, the most frequently used button in this game and Ninja Gaiden. So if you see me do that move, did not mean to do that just then, guys. Whenever you see that move, it is never intentional. The reason why, you are trapped in the animation of that move, and it's just not worth the risk. It really isn't, because by the time he's finished swinging the blades, you can be dead. I never use it, never liked it, never have, never will, and the only time I do it is when my pad sticks. So if you want to do a God of War Ascension drinking game, every time you see that move, drink, because it means my pad is screwing me. A second move you're going to see a lot is when I unlock the level 3 blades, or level 4 blades, where you get the evasive attack. I had to take a sip there, my voice was getting dry. Don't know why I said it like that, no fucking reason to talk like this. Whenever I roll and I do the attack, evade, roll command, that is never intentional. I am tapping square to do the fast roll while I'm rolling, and every so often the button sticks and it does that attack. So if you ever see that, or that spinning move, take a drink, because it wasn't intentional. But thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next part of this village, and you take care now.